Hi everyone, so this is my Ludum Dare, well I say Ludum Dare, I think it's pronounced some different way, but my Ludum Dare 39 time-lapse that I made, and it's the making of robot power, and the theme of this Ludum Dare was running out of power. So this is some footage of the game that I ended up making, and then I'm gonna enter the time-lapse now where you can get a little idea of how I put things together. So when I started, I didn't quite know what to do. First of all, I started 1 hour late because I'd missed to set up some of the recording things. It wasn't quite set up to spec. So when I got started, I wrote a few notes in Notepad, and then I just got started to modeling because I knew I wanted a robot in it, and I wanted to do some animations with the robot walking and running out of power. So I started to model in Blender straight away while I was thinking about the game idea. And initially, as you can see, I put a little propeller backpack in a solar panel at the top because I was going to do it sort of environmentally friendly, but I decided in the end not to do that. But then I modeled a rocket and I had a quick coffee break, and at this time it's about 3 or 4. Ludum Dare starts at 3 in the morning, so now it's about 5 in the morning, and I'd locked myself into I've got a sound room where I record sound effects in the garage, so I'd locked myself in there for this weekend to try to focus a lot on the game this time. And then I ended up spending quite a lot of time on the UV mapping, which I sort of wasted time on because I didn't really need it that detailed with the UV mapping. And then I did the detached hatch for the rocket, so you can open and close it with some hinges. And then I started to color the rocket in and made some texture maps for it. So yeah, at this stage then I started to move on to back to the robot, changed the face a little bit, and just made some minor adjustments before starting to UV map to make sure everything was alright. And fixed the eyes a little bit more. Again, probably more detail than I really need to go into, and I did spend time UV mapping it a bit too much probably as well. And then made a simple diffuse map. I was going to make him orange first, but decided to make him red. Don't know why I changed it. And then I moved on to rigging it, the robot in Blender with a simple skeleton, and then weight painted all the objects. And it's quite easy with the weight painting for robots because the parts move as solid blocks more or less. After that, I did some animations, the idle, and then moved straight into a run animation. I used a reference picture that you can see. I was alt-tabbing back and forth, so it flickers a lot. But basically, I looked at the reference and just made a simple run animation based on what I saw. And then I also decided to make a sad, low-power walk, and so I could blend between the two. And then I added some other animations that I was planning to use, like waving and jumping when you collected power. So yeah, 42 hours remain at this stage. So since I missed the first hour, then yeah, it was starting to get into the morning hours now, and I realized that the kids were waking up about this time. I've got 3 kids, and they started to run back and forth into the sound room during the day. Yeah, moved on to some additional animations. I decided to, let's see, what did I do at this point? Oh yeah, coffee break. Probably had breakfast here with the kids. As you can see, the minutes are ticking away. About half an hour, I think, went to that. So we had breakfast and a good chat. And then I moved on to, well, I continued with the animations, and then I imported it into Unity and made a blend tree so I could blend between the running and the walking animation. And then I started to, at this stage, I'd been in Blender for the first 6 hours, so now I was imported him into Unity, and then started to make a simple texture map and a floating island, which I knew I wanted, and a basic tree just to see if the look and feel would be. As you can see here, I started to do a Unity tree as well, but I decided to scrap that quite fast, and I wanted to make the low poly trees instead. And yeah, so I'm starting to get the blend animation in, and then I realized that I needed to tweak the walk animation because it was out of sync. It was flipped 180 degrees with the legs. So when I blended between the two, we started to make a weird little skipping, so I had to flip the legs around so that they were in sync, so right leg forward and on both the running and the walking animation. And then I started to add more code just to make sure everything was running in Unity. Started to get some of the game states in place. I always do that early on in the process by adding game states so I can transition between play and menu mode, for example. And I was trying to decide whether I thought it looked better with a black background as well, but then I went back and forth between a blue sky and a black background, and I guess with the floating islands it makes more sense to have a sky, which is the traditional look. And now I started to add some mechanics to the rocket so I could open and close the hatch, and had some problems with the animations in Unity, and then I had to redo this walk animation again because I had corrupted the file for some reason. So, and then I also modified it a new idle animation so he could have his head hanging when he was in idle mode. Yeah, so the first 10-11 hours were gone at this point, and I was still trying to think about the game mechanic when I was doing this part, so try to structure my work so I don't waste time just sitting with a blank paper and tearing my hair out. So I kept doing the animations and thinking about what the game should be about. So at this point, basically I knew he needed to collect power. I was still thinking maybe he should have solar power, but the batteries started to come into mind here, that I should probably have him collect batteries instead. And then continue to do the animation controller in Unity to transition between the different animation states. And then time for another coffee break. So at this stage we're 12 hours into the event. And I was sort of happy with the progress, even though I didn't have much of a game at this stage. And then I started to do some more just making sure that he could transition, jump up and down, and then I started to add the backpack to him, and then I decided he should have a rocket pack because it made more sense than jumping. He could use some power by flying between the islands as well. And then some basic particle effects for the thrusters, so just played around with that for a little while as well. And I also had to do some testing all the time, and I started to realize that the physics were a bit off. I wasn't using rigid body physics at this time. I was using just simple character controller that comes with Unity. But it was quite problematic for me because there's a bit of a bug, or the way it works, it doesn't really detect when it's grounded all the time, so I'm struggling a little bit to get it to work properly and get it to feel right. Then I added some flight animations, so he could fly back and forth. Still he's facing forward all the time, and then I see some comments already that it feels odd that he doesn't turn, and I guess I should have probably just kept him flying back and forth, so when you turn left he should flip left. But I needed to get the rockets to aim in the right direction because I relied on the animation to say which direction he should be flying, so maybe post I'll change that in the end. So. And then moved on to create the batteries. At this stage I knew he was going to be collecting batteries for power, so I made a simple battery and imported that into Unity as well, and then started to script that when you approach the battery you should basically attract to where the character is. So if you're close enough within a proximity, he'll just attract to where the player is, and he'll gain power. And I also decided that collecting a battery will give you full power, not just a slight addition. Because I knew that strategy, I wanted the strategy in the game to be part of where you had to maybe not collect all the batteries straight at once when you saw them, but you might have to leave batteries. So by the time you've collected whatever you collect on the level and you return, you might want to collect the power at the very end before you enter the rocket, because at the next level you'll maintain the same level of energy that you had, or the same power level that you had when you left that level. So I wanted that to be part of the challenge in the game, to realize that maybe I should just pick this battery at the end instead. And then just moved on to keep making the actual gameplay work by how you gather batteries, and that you should be able to maybe enter and exit the rocket, and always includes a bit of play testing back and forth, so to make sure everything works. And so we're got about 28 hours remaining now, so we're at this stage. I've been going for a long time. It was starting to get late during the first day, approaching midnight. So just kept doing some testing. Initially the trees were just going to be decorative as well, but then I ended up using the trees with collision detection as well, so you had to jump over some trees and use some energy that way as well. So and at this point, yeah, we've got 28 hours remain. I added some particle effects for the rocket because I knew I wanted to transition between levels by powering up the rocket so it flew out of the atmosphere and that it should land again. And that's how you went from one level to the next then. And then kept adding just code to do the level transition and making sure that he could get in and out of the rocket okay. And did have some bugs with that as well, but it worked good enough, I think. And at midnight I decided to go to bed and well, it wasn't even midnight, and I had quite a long sleep and a lot of hours ticked by. And then I started about 9 o'clock in the morning. I had to take the kids during the first couple of hours, so I got started with some of the islands, and I just knew I was going to make about 5 to 10 different styles of islands that I could scale and rotate on the level, and then just texture map them very basic with brown and green. And then I started to add some trees, and again I did the same, just a brown trunk and some canopies or some leaves with different spheres, and then I just multiplied the trees and made variations of them. And then I also added some pine trees. And then time for a coffee. As you can see, quite a lot of time ticked by here. I sped it up even more because I had to take the kids while my wife was getting a haircut and stuff like that. So, but then back to doing the trees, and 14 hours to go, and I still had a lot of the game itself left to make. And then for some reason I still decided to animate all the trees. So I made bone structures for all the trees and animated them to sway in the wind, and weight painted them as well. So, and they're so subtle in the game, so you don't really see that they're animated. So at this time would have probably been better spent maybe not animating them, but I still wanted to have the animation in place. And yeah, so just kept doing that. And I also ran into problems because when I multiplied all this and added all the actions in Blender, by the time I imported it into Unity, it messed up, so I got a lot of extra animations and it caused a lot of problems. I had loads of unused animations, and then I need to figure out why that's happening and do it differently next time. So in the end I ended up trying to clean up the animations so I didn't have all the excess, and it just didn't work. So in the end I exported I think the trees manually instead, one by one in Blender, and I imported them again. And I think 1 or 2 trees ended up not being animated in the end. But obviously with 12 hours remaining of the entire event, I couldn't spend any more time doing tree animations. And then I did some basic clouds. I wanted the clouds to be in the distance, so I did really simple clouds, and then made a script to rotate all the cloud elements individually, so you'll have slight animations in the clouds as well. And then started with the first level, which I knew I was going to keep very basic, just to get you to understand that, okay, you can pick up a battery and you should pick up whatever else that needs to be picked up on level. And here I did some depth of field as well, which I ended up not using in the end. I disabled that. Had some problems to get the focus just right. And this is where I finally decided as well that so in addition to the batteries that you pick up, you need to collect one item on each level before you head back to the rocket. and that ended up being star fragments. So it's just a shiny sort of part of a star that is somewhere on the level. So your objective is to reach that, pick it up, and then return to the rocket and move to the next level. And so the objective of the game is to collect that star fragment on each level. I couldn't come up with anything better. I probably would have wanted something else, but that's how I ended up doing it in the end. Then time for another coffee, and 9 hours remain at this stage. So I'm still have a lot of all the menus transitions to do, all the switching between the game states, spawning a new level, and then at this stage I also had to start making some actual levels because the game would be not much without any levels. So I tried to balance and alternate between making the menu at this point and adding some levels. I think I swapped back and forth a little bit with that because I obviously needed to have the menu system and the game state transitions work for it to be a complete game. And in the past I've done that earlier, which I'm going to do in the future again. I'm going to make sure I do the game state transitions early on instead of leaving it to this point. Because you start running into problems when you start spawning the player and restarting levels. You'll run into problems, which is quite annoying and time consuming. So if you get that out of the way early on, then you don't have to worry about that and feel stressed in the end. So my advice is to do the game states and the transitions between game states, like play, menu, pause, and resume. Do that early on. And then kept adding. I added another texture for some autumn-styled leaves, and I was hoping to add even more different look and feel to the trees and the platforms, but I opted not doing that since time was running away fast. Kept adding some levels and testing the levels as I was going on to make sure that they would play well. I would have liked to have spent a lot more time making many more levels and making the progression better, but I did as best as I could with the time that I had. And then I started to add the different, so if you fell off the level, you needed to end it, and if you ran out of power, you needed to end it. And so with 5.5 hours remaining, I started making the soundtrack. I know that when I have about 6 hours left of the event, then I need to definitely start making the music. So I was pressing on with that, and with music for me, it's a bit... either some days it'll just work and I'll make something that I'm really happy with, and then some days I can just sit over and over and over and I don't get anywhere. And in a game jam like this, I don't really have the luxury of waiting for inspiration to come, so I was struggling quite a lot. I couldn't get the melody going at all that I wanted, and I couldn't get the sound. It just didn't work, I didn't think, but I ended up having to press on anyway and just make sure I had some sort of a soundtrack. And since it was a bit of a longer game as well, I wanted it to be at least 3 minutes in duration. So this was quite a struggle this time, and I wasn't happy in the end. The music is one thing that I wish I would have done better at, but in the end, it had to do. So I spent a couple of 2 to 3 hours, I think, on the music before, and then I implemented it with the simple enable disable in the menu. And at this time, 3.5 hours remain. So I did the level transition, that you can transition between the levels and get some different tips. As you transition between a level, you'll get a little tip that you can press space to fast forward, for example, or you might want to save some batteries for the return trip. And I also added difficulty levels because I knew since I didn't have that many levels, I wanted to add many difficulty levels so you could complete the game and then restart at a more difficult level, and then complete that one and then go back and try it at more and more difficulty levels. So at least I ended up making 8 levels. Probably would have liked to have 10 or 20 at least, but with this it worked anyway. Oh yeah, here's me sound effect recording as well. So since I was locked into my own sound room when I was doing all this, I had the perfect place to record some sound effects, and then I had edited them, and less than 2 hours to the deadline now, I was just throwing all the critical thruster and rocket and jetpack sounds in the menu, clicking and the different clonking of the rocket landing. So I implemented that. With 1 hour to go, I started to make a level, or just a visual level for the menu system, to have something to look at in the menu and for some screenshots to make it visually appealing. And added the menu click sound, and then went into Blender again just to make a simple logo for the game. Decided to call it Robot Power in the end. And half an hour to go, that's where I thought, okay, I'll add a couple more levels if I can. So I went from 6 to 8 levels, and just made sure that it would play okay. Did some color changes. 10 minutes to go. Basically, I was done at this point. So just did some final play testing, and that's the entire making of Robot Power. Then, yeah, here's just some footage of what the final product ended up with, some instructions to get all the newcomers to understand what they're doing. And then for the video I clicked up a couple of levels of difficulty and then played it, and was hoping for this was during the submission hour I created this video. There was a lot of lag in the submission hour on the Ludum Dare site, so while I was waiting for the page to load, I recorded some video of this gameplay. So here you can see it'll throw up a tooltip or a little helpline as you transition between the levels. I probably would have liked the level transitions to work a bit smoother and faster. I was expecting quite a lot of comments on that, but at least I added the fast forward option. So here the robot collects the star fragment, and as you can see I pick up a battery on the return trip and then try to use as little energy as possible. When you reach the rocket, you jump in with a little bug there with the graphics, but that's okay, I guess. And here you can see I press space just to fast forward, so in the future when you do the level transitions you can just fast forward instead. And there I jump over the battery because I want to save that for the return trip. So as you can see he's walking really slow now. Got a battery, I pick up the star fragment with a little jump animation there, fly back, try to use as little power as possible because I know it's not going to reset for the next level, and then finally get the last battery and use as little power as possible before entering the rocket. Then we move on to level 4, and so I'm about mid difficulty now, and so pick up the star fragment on the level, and then as you can see I added some distant islands as well to get some depth in the levels as well, and didn't pick up those 2 batteries because they're not really I should have tweaked that level probably and kept just 1 battery on it. And then for level 5 again I started to add some parts of the level where on the drop down from space you'll see where the star fragment is, and this one is in the air, so it starts to be a bit that you have to hover to get them rather than running on the platforms. And then we're off to the next level, and for that one this is on this level I'm gonna fail on this one. I avoid to get that battery because I wanted to save it for the return trip, and then I have to make the jump to collect the star fragment, and then I have to turn around to start flying back, but here's where I just run out of power before I reach that battery. And I think I managed to get so that as you progress through the difficulty levels you'll find that there should be some challenges to complete the game, and in post now I hope to add more levels as well and fix some of the minor graphical glitches. So yeah, that was my LD Ludum Dare 39, and yeah, I really enjoyed making the game, and I think yeah, I've a lot of lessons learned for this one, and I'm really excited to practice a little bit more and then see what I can come up with for the next event, so in a few months. So all right, thanks for watching, and I hope it was that you could find some use out of this stuff, and yeah, have a good one, and I'll speak to you later. Bye bye.